I'm Craig Kenneth, a relationship coach and a psychotherapist. Every relationship is different and every breakup is different. Work with me and you'll get professional help on your situation. And if you're in no contact, focused on personal growth, my workbook series, The Knowledge, will help you make changes like you've never made before. Available now at AskCraig.net. Hi there, I'm Coach Craig Kenneth.
And I'm Coach Victoria.
And in this video, we're going to be talking to you about insecure controlling behavior causes breakups.
Let's talk about it. But before we do, I did want to say that Craig and I are available for coaching sessions. So if you would like to talk about your situation one-on-one with one of us, you can do so by heading to the website.
Absolutely. One of the things that I have seen in my years as a breakup coach and a dating coach is how much our behavior really impacts our connection. And we don't really realize it because we often grow up in dysfunctional homes with parents that are maybe arguing and fighting and don't have healthy relationships. Maybe you grew up in a single parent home or other setting. Maybe you grew up with grandparents. Maybe you were adopted, whatever. But we don't usually see healthy behavior. Our parents don't usually model healthy behavior, healthy relationships, and so we often unconsciously copy their behavior and do those same things that we saw blindly.
Right, and a lot of times it can be normalized for us.
Yeah.
We haven't seen any different, and so we don't know any different.
We just think that if we like somebody, they're going to like us back. And if we are excited about somebody, we often don't see the things that we're doing to turn them off. It's really interesting because many people can tell when the person they're interested in is turning them off, but they can't see it when they're doing the exact same thing to other people.
It's true. It's like if you were to tell 100 Italian families to all make lasagna. I'm sure each family would have their own little way of making it. Some families would call other families crazy for putting peas in the lasagna.
Yeah.
So, every family has their own little culture. And you grow up in this, and this just becomes the way that you operate. This becomes the way that you attach. This becomes the way you treat people and your partner. So it makes a lot of sense that it can be misinterpreted a lot of times. You might be doing something with the right intention. Well, my family does this all the time. This is super normal.
Yep.
And for the other person, that might be complete overstep of boundaries, for example. It can be seen as rude. It could be seen as a lot of anxiety.
Yeah. So you have to learn to change your behavior, but in order to do that, you have to learn what healthy behavior is, and then you have to learn how to identify unhealthy behavior, and then you got to do something different when it happens in real time, which takes a lot of practice and effort. This is why we have the workbooks. This is why we have the creative healing course especially, and we go into stuff like family dynamics, and we have lots of little cartoons that even show characters with these things going on with them because we see it. And then we really have these aha moments that help us change our behavior. And then we start to act in more confident, attractive ways, which decreases the likelihood that we're going to go through a breakup and that we're going to make mistakes when our ex comes back.
Right. The biggest thing is that we become self-aware. We start to realize, wait, these things that I grew up with aren't necessarily normal, and not everybody has experienced these things, and not everybody will treat me or others in that same way. So awareness is a huge step and a huge part of it, and also being able to communicate. Oh, well, this is why this has all happened.
Yep.
This is what I come from. This is what it's like for me. These are my intentions, and to be able to have a back and forth about it. So that's our hope.
Yep. That's why we're always talking about this stuff. And one way to give you a little bit of insight into that stuff is through attachment theory, because it does explain behaviors. It does explain the way that we go about getting our needs met, or meeting other people's needs, or not meeting other people's needs, or not getting our needs met. So it really just gives you some insight into mental health, okay? And you're going to see that in the email coaching that we're going to go through today, there are a lot of mental health issues, Okay, and it's not just from one partner, but for so many of you guys out there, you're struggling with your mental health issues, and so are your partners. Unfortunately, we don't live in this perfect situation where they're perfect and you're perfect and we can get them back. No, we've got a lot of different things that you want to look at that can help you understand things. And this is going to be a complicated situation, okay? So I'm just giving you a heads up now because you're in for some tough issues. There are going to be some tough issues in this one.
Yeah, and sometimes these things can be genetic. So mental health disorders can be shown in a family history. I know earlier I was joking about the peas in the lasagna. That's something maybe some people have more control over than not. But sometimes even in our biology, there's things that can affect our mental health. So I just wanted to bring that up.
Yeah, I want to know who put peas in their lasagna too.
Well, that's my family.
Your family?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I thought you were really Italian. Clearly you're not. Let's get into this one. This is from a woman in her mid-30s. We're going to call her Cheryl. And her boyfriend is a little bit younger, a few years younger. And we're going to call him Ralphie. Now, they live in different countries in Europe. I'm not sure how long of a flight that would be. Maybe you could guesstimate since you lived over in Europe for a while.
It would be a while.
I would guess at least like a 4 or 5 hour flight, maybe, something like that. You think so?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they met in the summer of 2022. And they've been in a long-distance relationship for a couple of years. She says, the reasons why we broke up is my anxiety and him not feeling safe anymore. We talk about this a lot. Safety, emotional safety is very important in our relationships.
Huge.
And so when we get anxious, we get controlling, we lash out, we lose our temper, and our partners don't feel safe with us, right?
Exactly.
I felt like I made him avoidant. That's an interesting statement, but there is some truth to that. If you are doing things that are filled with anxiety, putting pressure on your partner, overwhelming them, that's going to make them want to take space and look avoidant to you.
Yeah, and it's a dynamic. So we talk about the anxious avoidant trap all of the time, where someone's anxiety can be overwhelming and cause their partner to become a lot more recluse, can become more distant, and so that can be part of the dynamic. Maybe her anxiety did hike up, meanwhile he just went back into his shell.
And that's why we say you got to work on yourself, because if you become more secure, you're less likely to be anxious or avoidant to your partners. That would mean that they're going to be more likely to not feel smothered and trapped and run away, or they're going to be more receptive to your love if you're not putting pressure on them.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And it goes both ways. For the person who's anxious, you become more anxious if you see someone pulling back and pulling away.
Exactly.
So that's what makes it a trap and difficult to deal with.
But when you make adjustments, it can make adjustments to the dynamic.
Exactly.
She said, my childhood was challenging. My mom was abusive, and my dad, though loving, was often drunk. So we got some serious issues on her side. We got an abusive mom and a dad that's drinking all the time. Not a good environment to grow up. And you can only imagine what mom and dad were like. They might have been fighting all the time. Maybe dad was drinking. Maybe dad was anxious, couldn't handle mom. You don't know what's going to happen in these kind of dynamics.
Right, and it would cause a child to have a lot of anxiety. It would be like walking on eggshells as a kid and not having, a protective parent there, or a present parent for that matter. Yeah,
but you could see why somebody would not feel confident, not feel secure, and thus it's going to come out in your romantic relationships. Ralphie says childhood was good, but his parents worked constantly in their family business, which he now owns. He had a nanny, though his father disliked her, claiming she, quote-unquote, spoiled him. So, that makes me think, dad's probably avoidant. You're going to spoil that child. Let him cry it out. Yeah, that's how you wind up with a kid that doesn't feel safe, feel loved, and has all kinds of traumas, right?
And imagine being angry that someone else is treating your child very well.
Yeah, right? But here's another example of an avoidant that says, childhood was good.
Yeah.
And then you say, well, how many times did the police come to your house?
Only 50.
Oh, they knew us all by name. We took lots of rides in their patrol car, now that I think about it.
But this is what we mean when a lot of these things can be normalized. So that thought back then was very normalized, that you could spoil a child, that you could, be overly affectionate or give too many gifts, and then they become entitled and narcissistic in the world, which in fact, a lot of times it's more of the opposite. If the kid isn't nurtured and taken care of, then they have a lot of deficiencies, they have a lot of insecurities, which cause them to act in ways to make up for it.
Yeah, you can't spoil a child by picking them up and giving them love. That is bad parenting. I'm sorry, but you're going to wind up with kids that have serious attachment issues if you do that. Don't let them cry it out. You want to pick them up, check them, make sure they're okay. They may need to be fed. They may need to be burped. They may be having gas pains. You always want to be emotionally attuned to your kids. Ralphie's mom passed in 2017. They were very close and she loved him dearly and always spoke good about her. He left a job he loved to work with the family company and his dad, who calls him names or starts fights. So you already know, this is like noodles, right? That Margaret used to talk about noodles. In fact, we have a cartoon of the creative healing course with noodles.
We do.
Right?
And that was just a fake family business that Margaret came up with to explain part of that family dynamic that can happen, where there can be enmeshment and there can be this obligation to your family to either continue the family business or continue the legacy, which isn't always a negative thing, but can be if it gets in the way of someone's goals and aspirations and relationships.
Yeah, or if you feel trapped and you don't want to do it. And we know Dad is not a great guy. And he starts fights with them and calls them names. So my feeling is that he probably feels trapped to work in the family business, feels guilty about it. Mom passed away. He feels like he's got to be there for Dad. He's probably miserable because Dad doesn't treat him well, doesn't treat him with respect. And remember, they're in different parts of the country or in Europe. They're far apart. So what does that mean to me? Well, he's probably not going to leave the family business to move where she is.
Right.
Meaning that she would probably have to move there to make it work with him. Then she would be having to tolerate this toxic environment where he's not happy.
Right. And grief can be so complicated. So I understand where he's coming from, where he does get closer to his family, even though he doesn't like the way that he's treated. And it can sound strange, but even his family who doesn't treat him well or, picks fights with him, that can still feel like a sense of support because you're connected with someone who's associated with your loved one, the person that you had just lost. It's your family.
Yep.
So it can be super complicated, and it seems like he's in a tough position.
Yep. And it's going to get worse, okay? We're going to deal with some serious issues in this one. He hates his job and is so stressed that he often feels sick, vomits, and relies on smoking weed daily to relax. Okay, so imagine being that unhappy that you're making yourself sick and vomiting from the stress and being so miserable. That's going to have a massive impact in somebody's ability to stay in a relationship. Imagine being that unhappy day after day, feeling trapped, like you can never leave this business, being insulted, being called names, being demeaned, and trying to have a healthy, happy relationship with somebody.
Yeah. And, I'm glad that she's pointing out the nausea and the vomit, because that's a very common symptom of anxiety and could also be of grief, how that's affecting his system.
Yep.
So it's a good way of putting it. These are the things that he was dealing with. And the smoking weed daily, I know that can be normal for a lot of people, but a lot of people do self-medicate with other substances to be able to cope with whatever they're dealing with. So that's what that looks like to me.
Yeah, for him, it seems like he's doing this just to get by every day. And as you're going to see, it's very intense, okay? Our relationship felt safe and loving. We visited each other often and communicated daily. I supported his friendships and never pressured him when he spent time with his friends, which I'm sure he really appreciated. After I moved back to my hometown, I started having nightmares about my mom. So, you know what's going to happen here. You start having anxiety, nightmares. How many of you have nightmares about your ex and then want to call them immediately? It's like, it happens all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Don't let your nightmares make you reach out to your ex.
And our dreams and our nightmares, they're so connected with our emotions. Sometimes you wake up and you're struggling to realize if you're still in the dream or not. You know, I know mornings are sometimes the worst for people who are going through breakup, people who are going through grief. So, this would spike anyone's anxiety.
Yep. After I moved back to my hometown, I became insecure and controlling, especially about social media, accusing him of things he never did. This led to constant fights caused by my anxiety, which is what we talked about at the onset of this video. So imagine being in his situation where he's miserable, he's unhappy at work, he's feeling trapped, he's feeling pressured, he's being belittled, all these things are going on, and then the partner who was his safety and he felt good about and excited about is now accusing him of things that he never did. Now, we're assuming that he didn't do anything. He may have, and maybe she's trying to minimize it now, feels, sometimes we feel bad.
Yeah,
He wasn't really doing anything. But we're going to assume that he didn't do anything and the anxiety was causing her to lash out.
And I mean, it makes sense to go to social media and have a lot of assumptions about what's going on. A common thing that we hear is a partner liking a photo of someone who you think your partner might find attractive, and it just blows up into something that's, disproportionate to the situation sometimes. And sometimes the other person is super stubborn on liking some person's photo.
Well, remember on Instagram, you used to be able to see everything that the other people liked.
Yeah. That got a lot of people in trouble.
We need to talk to Zuckerberg and get some info. We could get some real info. We need the numbers on what people's stalking was like.
Yeah.
You can imagine.
These things happen, and they cause a lot of conflict in relationship. They're really tied to people's, feelings of being respected in a relationship and so on and so forth. So it seems like she was feeling insecure. She tried to grasp onto something that seems concrete, like social media, because you can access it so easily. You can hop on at any time. It's possible she may have come to her own conclusions about things that may or may not have been accurate, but had a reaction to it.
Yep. She goes on to say, by spring, Ralphie became increasingly depressed, posting about suicidal feelings, which is absolutely terrifying when you see somebody go through that. I had a friend recently whose son just committed suicide last week. And it's been horrible to see. I know so many people connected with him, and they're all just absolutely devastated about situations like this. So please be sure, if you're ever feeling like this during a breakup, to look up information in your area. We're talking with people around the world, so there are different resources all around the world to contact, phone numbers. Please talk to a friend, anyone. But we never want to see anybody hurt themselves, because I know a lot of people feel like that in a breakup.
Exactly. And now you can even text some of these suicide hotlines. So if you don't feel the boldness to call, contact them in some sort of way. Find an alternative to get help for yourself.
Yeah, I know that breakups feel like they're never going to get better. And you get kind of tunnel vision that it's going to stay like that. But it does get better. You have to do your best to process it in any way that you can, in healthy ways. Find healthy ways, outlets, exercise, talking about it, whatever you can do to feel better. But it does get better with time. Okay. So she goes on to say that he started therapy for depression. So that's great to hear. First time he lashed out at me and said he had nothing to hide. Nothing is wrong with him. He doesn't want to talk about his issues to a stranger. I actually mentioned that in a video we released today about avoidance often saying they don't want to talk about things with a stranger. Just because therapists get paid to do their job, it doesn't mean that they don't care about what they do. Everybody has to take care of their families. Everybody has bills that we have to do. It doesn't mean you don't care about people because you get paid to do what you do.
And at least in the US, we have very strict confidentiality rules. So I understand that he's concerned about it. He doesn't want to talk to just someone random about these things, but I don't know what it's like where he's from, but I'm hoping that he could find somebody who is a trained professional who would know how to deal with some of these issues that he has, and someone he trusts. This is something we also encourage all of you to do. If there is a local therapist that you connect with, it's important that you have a good rapport with them, a good relationship, because that's 80% of the therapy right there is having that good connection.
Yeah, it's so true. Finding somebody that you just can get along with talking to and you feel good talking to. Yeah, it's a big part of it. Okay. So he said, and he asked me if it was okay to smoke a joint before the session. Well, it's not ideal, but if that's what you got to do to get through the session, you do what you got to do. I'd much rather see somebody get into that session and start to feel comfortable than not do it at all.
Yeah, fair.
You know?
It depends. Certain therapists have certain feelings about that, but
true.
You know, certain states here, these are things that are legal, and or you know, if you have your medical license, whatever it might be. So, neutral stance.
Then he started to post about feeling sad, about suicide driving, and songs about suicide. Okay, so we can see this is how serious it was. This is why I was talking about mental health being so important at the start of this video, because when somebody's going through this, they have no ability to maintain a relationship. Because, I mean, look at how low he is. Look at how much he's struggling. How is he going to give a partner what they need when he's struggling this much?
And he probably was so offended at some of her assumptions about what had happened, because he's thinking, I have so much that I'm dealing with, and
Good
now
point.
On top of everything, I have to deal with this whole situation that was just created.
Yeah.
So it seems like he's reached his limit. And it occurs to me, too, that he might be afraid of speaking with a therapist, because I don't know what the confidentiality laws look like there, but he might be worried that, you know, help would be called for him. He might be put into a facility. In some places, that looks different than others. So with someone who's a good trained clinician, they will guide you through that process to make it not scary. And you have to think, you know, it's better to get help for yourself, be surrounded by people who know what they're doing. I know the system isn't always the best, but you have to be able to get help for yourself somehow.
Yep. I asked if he needs to talk with me, and he said no. One day we were fighting again and lashed out. He said, and this is kind of talking about what you were just saying, "You don't care about us or this relationship at all. I effing needed you, and all you do is care about stupid Instagram. I can't take this anymore." It's exactly what you were saying. Now we have an example of it. In the fall, I found your channel and began watching your videos daily. I began EMDR therapy and was diagnosed with PTSD and anxiety, and I'm also on medication now. I left him alone, joined the gym, started to meditate, wrote a gratitude journal, made new friends, and focused on myself and purchased your workbook. The anniversary of Ralphie's mother's passing, he liked my story for the first time in months. Then he started to watch my Instagram stories immediately after I posted them. Then it escalated to him liking everything I posted. Then he started to text me more and more, and I took time to reply and keep things light. So that's what we talk about. He started slowly coming back, and she was calm, so that's good. He finally wrote to me, "I want to be honest. I miss spending time with you. It's a pain to stay distant from you."
Wow.
We talked on Discord, and he kept on texting and coming on strong. Last Sunday, Ralphie told me I'm not a priority anymore. That hurts. That hurts. Especially when he's coming back around. Now you're going to tell me I'm not a priority? He said he's happier spending time with friends and can't give me what I need. Well, I do agree that right now he can't give her what what she needs. He's just not in that place. He's very depressed, you know, and he's got to get help for himself.
And yeah, grief can completely transform you into a different person. If you've ever lost someone close to you, you know that you do not feel like yourself for a while.
Yeah, you're exhausted, and irritable.
Yeah, and that first year is always the most difficult. You know, the anniversary of his mother's passing, it makes sense that all these feelings of longing are coming back, but it's complicated. Now remember that the mother was abusive.
Mm-hmm.
And so this isn't just a simple, clear-cut type of situation. It's complex. To have grief over someone who's hurt you, but also feel abandoned in life by them.
Yeah.
So it can be really, really complicated.
Especially when it's mom.
Mm-hmm.
I reminded him we used to balance our personal lives and relationship well. He dismissed this, saying, I don't even want to send you pictures anymore. I'm tired of fighting with you. Well, remember, like I just said, people are irritable when they're depressed, and they have very little patience. So even the smallest thing could cause somebody to kind of snap at them.
Right.
Like
And I find that in general, there is a lot of misunderstanding around grief and not enough education about grief. So often you will see a partner of someone who's going through something like that, and their emotions, their mood is completely different. They haven't lost someone close to them. So they are moving on, thinking about other things. She's clearly thinking about, or was thinking about Instagram and having these other feelings of jealousy, and able to think about different aspects of life other than just sadness, depression, grief, loss. And so that disconnect can cause a lot of breakups because the other person doesn't feel seen and heard, and feels almost the weight of the other person's preparedness to move on in life. And that can feel like a lot when you're in a relationship.
Absolutely. If our love happens, it will, but we can't rush it. If it doesn't, that's fine too. We're still together, but not dating others. I'm protecting myself from getting hurt again, but my love for you is still as strong and hasn't faded a bit. He said he's proud of my growth and wouldn't have reached out if he hadn't seen it. However, he believes spending time together might reverse our progress and lead to old patterns. He's certain he never wants to fight again. Here's another reason you're going to know he's avoidant. As relationships should be easy and free of conflict. Oh, poor naive fool.
We wish.
Relationships are going to be free of conflict? Come on, that is completely unreasonable. You're going to have some conflict sometimes. People have different beliefs and feelings and views on things. It's just normal. But avoidants believe that it's supposed to be easy.
And they really don't want sometimes what their parents had, where it was full of conflict.
Yeah.
And so they almost idealize this relationship that's free of conflict and easy. And it's hard to find the middle ground. It's hard to see how can we handle conflict in a healthy way, just because they haven't seen that.
But he's so depressed right now that he would probably be very neglectful as a partner anyway. And she would just get frustrated and upset. And he's like, well, this should be easy. Well, how about doing something to make it easy, right? But it takes two people to make an effort. And when you're depressed, it's very tough to make an effort.
It's hard, yeah.
Yep. After that, I left him a voicemail saying, I'm sad and hurt. I cannot do this if he won't work on this relationship too. And that's a great point. He listened and didn't reply. What should I do? I'm making so many changes in myself because I want to get healthy for myself and for us. But it seems, despite the changes, he doesn't want to do this and fears it will go back to how it was, and that it's only safe if he keeps his distance. Please help. I love him a lot, but I don't know if I mess things up by saying it's best to leave me alone if he won't work on this relationship. What should I do? Did I ruin things permanently? Okay, so obviously this is a very complicated situation with some very serious mental health issues. Both of them sound like they've been through trauma in their life. Both have family issues. He's depressed, extremely depressed. He probably feels trapped working for the family business with his dad who's mistreating him. She's far away. She's anxious over it. And it's a very complicated dynamic.
Yeah. Did she ruin things permanently? It seemed there towards the end that he was a lot warmer, but you could see in the messages the ambivalence. There'd be one moment where he was explaining to her how he missed her, then another moment where, you can tell that he clearly wants his distance. And so it takes an incredible amount of patience to be with somebody who's going through grief, just as it takes an incredible amount of patience to be with somebody who has high anxiety.
Yeah.
So right now, are they at the place where they could meet each other's needs? We can't say that for sure.
I don't think he's ready. She's more ready than he is.
And it sounds like she's working on that too.
Yeah.
But the word permanently, we know that grief, depending on how you look at it, but grief isn't permanent, right? Sometimes healing can take a lifetime. Sometimes you are always healing, but grief isn't permanent. Now, healing can take a lifetime, and some people might not be fully healed from a loss like that. There will always be some memory or some moment that can take you back. I'm sure anybody who's had a major loss, if they really thought about it, they can bring themselves to tears again, right? But the intensity of that grief isn't permanent. And I'm hoping that he can find help for himself to where he can work through this and find life worth living again. So I think a lot of this, yes, is dependent on his mental health and also her growth and ability to manage anxiety, as well as understand grief better. I think she would take things a lot less personal if she had a better understanding of grief.
Yep. And there's one other major factor. What is he going to do about noodles?
Yeah.
Until he figures out what he's going to do with that family situation, he may be miserable. So he's got to figure out, is he going to tolerate dad and stay there because he wants to? Will he be happy there? It's his life. And that's a major decision that he's going to make. And she's got to consider, does she want to be in a situation, if he does stay in that, with him being so upset, depressed, irritable, annoyed, angry, to the point where he's vomiting and he's, smoking every day to numb himself. So that's not ideal either. So there's a lot of things that would have to get sorted through before they can figure out how to work this out together. Remember, they're on different sides of Europe as well. So lots of complications here. So they got to take it slow, and they both need to make sure they're in a good place and figuring things out before they try and rush into repairing this.
Right, and with the long distance relationship, that's the question, is how are we going to make this work long term? Do we want to stay apart long term? Or is one of us going to make the move to live in the same city, live in the same home?
Exactly.
And how will the dynamics change from that? Because it's very different experiencing grief from miles away versus experiencing grief when your partner's in the living room sobbing up the carpet. You know, it's very different when you're experiencing it face on. So
that's why we're saying there's so much about the situation that you got to consider. Okay. So hopefully this one's been helpful to you. Of course, if you want to get our help personally, you could do that on my website, askcraig.net. I do email coaching and I do Skype. Coach Victoria is also available for Skype coaching.
I'll be here whenever you're ready to chat.
Just click on her name at the top of the website to schedule with her. But that's it for this video. I'm Coach Craig Kenneth.
And I'm Coach Victoria.
And we will talk with you soon.